With the dawn of DSLRs, film cameras started getting shuffled off into more professional uses or student uses, but they weren't really made for regular consumers anymore. And the thing about making cameras for regular consumers is that there's a lot of competition, which often results in really good cameras. The Nikon N80 is really interesting because it represents the peak of what Nikon brought to consumer SLR technology. Like, this camera is really impressive in a lot of ways. Now, I was interested in an N80 because I shoot my Nikon F100 all the time. I love that camera, but it is more geared towards prosumers and pros. It's a heavier, larger camera, and I'm kind of a big baby when it comes to carrying a camera around all day, and I like walking around with cameras for travel and when I'm in a new city and things like that. So I really wanted a camera that was lighter than the F100, but basically had all the features the F100 has. Like, I love my old school manual film cameras, but especially if I'm on a job or I'm doing something more professional, like I want something a little bit more modern. It has just some of those quality of life features. So let's start off with some of the controls and features of the camera, since that's kind of the most impressive stuff about this. Like, everything that you get on the Nikon F100 and even like the F5 is here in some capacity. It's got 5 focus points in the viewfinder. It's even got a grid that you can turn on and off, which is super cool. I shoot with a grid all the time on my mirrorless cameras, especially since I have a tendency to cant my camera in a weird way if I don't have one. So yeah, that's awesome. It's even got a built-in flash, which my F100 doesn't have that. This thing is so feature complete, it really reminds me of the early DSLRs that I used. Like, I love my Nikon D40, and this is very similar, right down to the silver shutter button. There's really nothing missing here as far as controls go, except that it only does exposure compensation in increments of 0.5 stops rather than 0.3 stops, which is a little irritating. I usually leave my cameras on like a negative 1/3 stop because often for landscapes and stuff, I tend to notice my camera is overexposing a little. It's not that big of a deal, but it's like a psychological thing. A lot of the features, unfortunately, are buried in a custom settings menu, just like the Nikon F100, which is just, that classic VCR code style interface that we just know and love from the late 90s. I posted a cheat sheet on my website because there's really no way to know what the custom settings are unless you have a written guide of some kind to look at to decode them. Luckily, this is kind of a set it once and forget it sort of thing, so it's not the end of the world. I found exposure to be really solid with this camera. I got great results. I shot it right alongside my F100 for a few shoots, and yeah, I couldn't really tell the difference between one camera and the other. I will say that the little ring that you select your exposure mode can kind of get loose. On mine, it sometimes doesn't, stay on in matrix meter mode. It'll like shift the spot mode, but it still worked fine, and you can keep an eye on it in the viewfinder. Now, the best thing about this camera isn't necessarily any of those buttons and knobs and all that, which, they're all great, but it's just how light it is. This is such a light camera. Like, this really does feel significantly lighter than the F100 while kind of holding all the same features. It actually kind of makes a difference. Not only is it nice to walk around with as a street camera or a travel camera all day, but sometimes when I'm shooting, I have 2 cameras on me at once, one with like a telephoto and maybe one with a different lens on it. And I actually found this as a really good secondary camera because it wasn't so heavy that it was breaking my back having this and another camera on as well. It's good to make sure you pair this camera with a relatively light lens to keep that lightweight, advantage. I have paired this with very heavy lenses, and then at that point, what are you doing? Just adding a few ounces to that doesn't really matter. There are some compromises that Nikon made to get it so light, and the biggest one is really power. This camera just uses 2 like half-size lithium batteries, and it really does make a difference with how much power this camera has to use. You'll sometimes notice this camera struggling to focus with really big, heavy lenses that might require more power from the camera body. And you also want to be careful of using the flash a lot because that'll probably run down your battery pretty quickly. I would prefer double A's if possible. Like 2 double A's I think would have been perfect for this camera, but I'm sure there's some engineering science reason why that wasn't feasible. There are a few other flaws with this camera. It just isn't as tough as a lot of other cameras out there. One of the things that breaks, unfortunately, pretty often is these little plastic clips on the back door. Now, like the F100, which also has this problem, there are fixes that you can do, and I actually made a video about that you can check out. The other thing that goes wrong really often with these cameras is sticky rubber syndrome. So basically what's happening here is that when the camera is sitting around not being used, the vulcanized rubber starts leaching oil. Like there's a mineral oil that seeps out and just kind of collects on the surface. This is why like old electronics that are used often don't have sticky grip syndrome, because all rubber is secreting this oil all the time. That sounds gross. And just like everyday wear and tear, like the friction of just touching your camera will get rid of the oil that's coming out. But if this camera's sitting in a drawer for years, decades, like the oil will just collect on the surface until like, ugh, it's disgusting. Well, you'll see online there's like 8 billion solutions for how to fix sticky rubber syndrome, and most of it's like AI slop now. There's actually one super easy solution. You just take something like a paper towel and you scrub it for a really long time. That's it. Yeah, there's not really a special solution. You just have to remove all that oil that's collected, and it's gonna take a long time. Something like a magic eraser can work because it's combining with the oil and then kind of just falling off in a powder. Paper towels also work because the paper towel is like breaking up. There's all sorts of people who have like different like detergents and stuff that they think work, but ultimately what's actually doing the work is the scrubbing, and that abrasive friction is what's going to remove the mineral oil from the surface. And then yeah, once you're done, it's good as new. Like there's not a hint of stickiness on this camera anymore. And it also, the more you use it, the less sticky it's going to get. So yeah, sticky rubber syndrome, it's not fatal, but don't be surprised when you get one of these that has it. So the N80, this is an awesome camera. I totally recommend it if you like using practical SLR style film cameras. This isn't a camera for collectors or people who are really into that classic, F3 retro film crank style camera. This is really for people who want to shoot 35mm. This is a camera for photographers. And I love that right now it's about as cheap as it's going to get, because all electronics go through that phase of, being obsolete, more and more obsolete, than becoming collector's items. Eventually this will become more of a collector's item, but right now it's just a very practical and useful camera. It does have its weaknesses, but if you keep it in mind and use the right lenses for it, then you're going to have a great time. This is one of my favorite lenses to use with my Nikon N80. It's the AFS Nikkor 24-85 3.5 to 4.5G. It's just a really nice lens. Like I actually like this a lot more than the F4 AFS, like super zoom that goes from like 24 to 105. The distortion levels are really nice for film. Like it's not like out of control or anything, and it gives you a really practical range. And yeah, the aperture is not bad either. Like 1.3 at one end is nothing to sneeze at. And most importantly, it's pretty light. Now when I'm walking around using like city photography or something, I really like 50mm focal length. You can still get this lens brand new right now, and it's a really good deal. This is like an amazing little lens. Any f1.8 50mm, oh, amazing. So what do you think about the Nikon N80, or F80 as much of the world knows it? Is this a camera that you use? Have you used it in the past? Do you have fond memories shooting it back in the 2000s? How do you think the N80 compares to the Nikon F100 and even the F6, some of the last really good cameras that Nikon made for their film series? Well, I appreciate you watching this review, and yeah, if you enjoyed it, give me a like, subscribe, all that's great, and yeah, get out there and happy shooting.